Welcome to Face2Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face2Face. So my next interview is with Govinda Van Maele and Frederick Lau, the actor from the new film Gutland. And you're going to find out if I pronounce that the right way or not once we get into the interview. This is a surrealist rural noir about a German thief who flees, who runs to a small Luxembourg village, only to discover that the locals, the people, the families there have secrets of their own. This is a fascinating film, and you're going to really enjoy it. We talk today, and you're going to really enjoy the conversation. We talk a lot about evil, and we talk about tension and about duality and about how we all live in what, you know, for the most part is a pretty paradoxical and fragmented society. We talk about irony and about cynicism and about fairy tales for adults and about how so many of us are stuck in the past and also really looking for a new beginning, because Gutland is really about that in a sense. And we talk about evil in a way. How interesting is this, as Govinda says, evil doesn't think it's evil. And we talk about this existential need and desire as we all seem to be searching for something. The interview is coming right up. You're going to enjoy it a lot. The film is called Gutland. And don't forget davidpecklive.com for more information about my speaking and my writing. Face2facelive.ca for interviews this year, focusing on the Toronto International Film Festival. Over 30 interviews with directors, filmmakers, producers, and actors. And also rabble.ca. You're going to find a whole lot of other writers and podcasters there talking about issues that matter. Coming right up, Govinda Van Maele and Frederick Lau talking about Gutland. Well, welcome to Face2Face. We're joined by a couple of very special guests here today at the Toronto International Film Festival. We're here to talk about a film called Gutland, or as the director I think is going to tell you, also could be pronounced Gutland. Thank you both for joining me here today, Govinda and Frederick. Please introduce yourselves as we dive in.
I'm Frederick Lau. I'm the main actor of Gutland, and I'm from Berlin.
And I'm Govinda Van Maele. I'm from Luxembourg, and I'm the director of the film.
So, first of all, congratulations and welcome to Toronto. And I hope you get to, I understand you just kind of got off the plane within the last 24 hours. Hope you enjoy the festival and are able to actually dive in some way. So, Gutland is an area, it's a place, but there's more than that going on, it seems to me, in the film. This is not just about geography. And I think, for me, Govinda, there's not a whole lot that's good about this place. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, Gutland is... It's half of the country in Luxembourg is called Gutland. It's the Gutland area. It's where I live, I like, first of all, I like the sound of it. That's important when you choose a title.
Sure.
And after that, for me it defines the place where I come from as well. Luxembourg is sort of a good land. It's called Le Bon Pays in French. This area, so it means the good land. It's traditionally or historically, it's where in Luxembourg you found the most fertile land. So it's where most of the farmers were living in the beginning. And to me, it speaks in many ways also of what the film represents.
Right.
Yeah.
So the duality, is that when we were chatting a little bit earlier, that is it as simple as good and evil? Is it that polarized? It doesn't seem to be to me. It's a little more complicated.
The film is on both sides all the time. So
yes,
it's like who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. So you can read it whichever way you want. What's a happy end? What's a nightmarish ending? The film has both in the end. So there's a lot of irony going on in the film.
For sure.
And maybe even cynicism, I don't know. But Gutland, maybe it plays a part of that.
How much of it for you, I noticed the Gruffalo, and I want to talk about that in the film. The son of Lucy was reading it at one point, I think, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. But how much of it is actually a fable, or sadly might actually be steeped in some kind of reality?
Well, Fable.
And I don't mean just in Luxembourg, but you know.
Fable is good because I see it a little bit like a fairy tale for adults, for many reasons which I could go into now. But I mean, I could say for once, for example, that for me this film has a lot to do with childhood.
Right. Yeah.
My personal childhood. If you look at the film, you can see that it's set today. It's in I mean, we shot it in 2016, and we are really not hiding the fact that it's shot in 2016. We didn't look for period drama kind of setting, but at the same time, it's really a film that is looking backwards instead of forwards. It's in the production design and in the design in general. You have, for example, if you look at the agricultural techniques that the farmers are using, it's a lot of things that are not really in use anymore. You can find them, but it's more things that come from my childhood that they kind of stopped these things in the last 10 years. Like, for example, the way that they're harvesting the bales, the hay bales.
Right.
They're small hay bales, which you will never find. Well, it's hard to find in Luxembourg at the moment. We actually found a farmer who's using it still. But for me, this is part of the nostalgic element.
The
of
charm
the
of it. Are they stuck in the past, Govinda?
I am stuck in the past.
You're
As
stuck
a
in the
filmmaker,
past.
I'm going through the world backwards.
Sure.
I'm feeling very often, and this film is consciously also playing with that.
Stuck in the past, and Frederick, I have a question for you about that duality in a second. But are you stuck in the past? Would you say, Govinda, from a kind of at the risk of getting too personal, sort of dealing with the past, like from a therapeutic perspective? Because we're all kind of running to some degree from our upbringings and our memories and the pain of, I think, and I think there's a deep existential edge to your film. I really do.
Yeah, I let myself I let myself discover what my film is about while I'm making it.
Nice.
I think, and I'm doing this also on purpose, because I don't like knowing everything that it's about when I'm starting, because I don't want to get into a mode where I'm like looking from above at my life or at the story and then just kind of trying to bring this to the audience. I'm discovering many things in the film right now, for example.
Right.
There's things when I'm looking at story, I'm just reminded that they actually come from my life, and I didn't notice it while I was.
Well, how much does the Gruffalo play into Gutland?
The Gruffalo is really there's a moment where Lucy, the character in the film, she's reading the book to her son, and it's the book itself that you can see in the film is the Gruffalo, but you don't. I mean, you wouldn't know it if you didn't know that book,
right? Because
you don't see the cover. We couldn't put it in there with the cover and the title and everything.
Sure,
because you have to pay rights, and it fell in there by accident because we needed a book for that. We needed a prop for that scene, and the production designers sort of, I don't know. I think they had a couple of books on proposal, but none of them were really. I don't know for what reason. I didn't like it. I don't remember. But we sent our assistant out to get a new book from my house, and she drove home and went through my son's books, and she came back with the Gruffalo, and it was perfect. It's really
absolutely perfect, isn't there? And I haven't looked at it, but isn't there a line something about the dark wood?
Yeah, but that was written. That was.
That for me, when I saw it, smiled, delightfully, because of Frederick's character, this guy, this stranger, this dark, the guy coming out of the dark wood. I mean, isn't that the establishing shot essentially?
Yes, I mean it starts like a fairy tale in that sense. It's sorry, but it's like a beast coming out of the woods.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like this creature, the Gruffalo, who comes out of the woods, and then he meets this girl, and she's dressed in like a fairy tale costume.
Yes,
basically.
Yes.
I mean, it's very realistic because that's something that it's the most realistic part of the whole film in the end, because they have this tradition in Luxembourg to do this sort of old Austrian kind of village parties.
Sure,
everyone is dressed in this dirndl, we call it.
Yes.
And Lucy's dressed in that. So when they come together, it's really like the Gruffalo meeting the beauty, or the beauty and the beast. Yeah.
Frederick, so tell me about the duality. Tell me about the good and evil. You come across in the film, to me anyway, as the good guy, if I can say that in such a simple way. Like you're the criminal, and yet you seem to have ethics. You seem to have morals. You're horrified by some of the things that are actually happening in this good land.
So for me, it's like a guy coming from a bad past. He was in jail and stuff, and wants to quit everything and wants to come there to this little village and start a new life as a farmhand. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, and then I think the village, or also Lucy, wants to change him as a for a guy to a guy who exists before, like Josh. So for me it was interesting. First of all, to come. I'm also a Berlin guy, so never saw a real farm in my life before.
Right.
So for me, it
City
was
boy.
also a little
City boy.
What?
A city boy.
City
Yeah,
boy,
yeah.
definitely. And so for me, it was also a journey. For me, as Frederick, like for Jens in the movie. Yeah.
How about the good and evil side of it? I mean, there are moments where...
There are moments. I think.
Well,
I
you
think
run-
for me,
you run
Josh
from
is
it.
more evil. Josh is more evil than Jens. So and sometimes Josh is coming inside of Jens, and also Jens is wondering about what has now happened, or it's not me, or you can really grab it. I think you really don't know what is evil or what is good.
Right,
so
right.
that's the interesting
Well,
thing.
for
in
me,
the movie.
for me and your character, when I just went, okay, I really like this guy, because I think it's really difficult. I mean, I go to the go-to for good and evil is Alan Rickman in Die Hard. I mean, it doesn't, that showing that sort of complexity. You love him, you like him.
Yeah.
He's a guy that you might even want to hang out with,
Yeah.
but then he'll put a bullet through your head in a heartbeat. And you don't strike me quite as that. And yet there was that scene when they were about to discipline the children in a absolutely horrifying way, and you react. And you say, no way, you guys are crossing the line. I'm not going to have any of that. That to me is really fascinating for a guy who's the criminal, or at least what we think is the criminal.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's fascinating, that whole good and evil. So when your first night with Lucy, she says to you a day later, or maybe 2 days later, I'm really sorry, I could have been a little nicer to you.
Yeah.
And that was how, and yet you still falled for her. Why?
Because she's something. I think it's a long time ago. Jens had a girl, of course, maybe some horse. I don't know. So
he came out of prison. That's
prison, for him it's the first time. He's also sensitive and stuff.
He really is, and you portray that
he is.
really, really well. By the way, congratulations to both of you again.
Thank you.
I don't know if I've said it yet or not, but again,
So
congratulations.
he's searching for something. She's like he wants to be loved. And yes, and the funny thing is, because normally the women are much sensitive or much.
Oh yeah, no, the roles on that
roles,
first night together were completely turned on their
Turned-
heads.
Yeah, that's true. And she makes him like, was heißt abhängig?
Dependent.
Yeah,
Dependent,
kind of
right? Yeah,
dependent,
no,
of
he
course.
really falls for her, and,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
true.
what I love about that one scene, Govinda, is the hands, and how you keep coming back to the hands, and it really reinforces something is not. I'm getting goosebumps actually. Something is not right in this town. What's going on
When
around
she
here?
takes him home the first time.
That's right, like
Yes.
within minutes,
Yeah,
right?
it's a rape scene basically.
Basically, it is.
Jens is getting raped in the beginning of the film by this girl. I mean, we played it like that. She played it like that. It was definitely what the intention was in the acting, that he has no chance. She's just taking him home and then kicking him out at the end of the night.
Very exploitative, really manipulative on so many levels, right? To talk about turning the role on its head.
Yeah. And Jens is I mean, he doesn't look like it at all, but he's a real softie, I think.
Yeah, I think he is too.
Yeah. He's very mushy.
And did you have to direct Frederick in that way, or did that just kind of come out in the performance?
We had a lot of meetings before. I went up to Berlin quite a lot of times. We got to know each other, and we talked a lot about. We kind of circled the film, the subject, and the roles a lot. And then I kind of left Vicky and Frederick to themselves to kind of. I trusted them to understand what we were doing, because we talked a lot about it. And the moment when we realized that we all understand, we're all on the same page, we just went for it. And then
and then you allow a certain amount of freedom within that, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Are you a stickler for the script at that point, or do you let somebody like Frederick kind of go with it?
I mean, my approach in general is always to kind of be open to the people that you're working with, be it with the crew or being with the actors. But with the actors, it's very important, because one of the first things I learned when making films when I was a teenager with my friends is that it's the most frustrating thing when you think you have to tell an actor what to do exactly. The way you imagine it. There was the moment. I remember exactly the moment when I understood what an actor is, and that was when I was trying to force a friend of mine to do a certain expression for one of the films we were doing as teenagers.
Trying to force him. It's
yes,
funny.
I was telling him, no, you have to do it like this. It's like that,
Right.
and he just couldn't do it, and he was getting more and more frustrated. And when I realized that that's just completely the wrong way, that's when it did click in my head, and I realized, wow, that's what an actor is. You just make him understand, and then you trust him or her, and then she gives it to you. She tells you what it is. It's not necessary. I can't dream what the expression is on his face. He gives it to me, and what we have to do is we have to kind of just make everything clear to each other, be on the same page, and then he does his job. That's how I see working with an actor, and that was great fun with Vicky and Frederick.
So that paradox, that contradiction of good and evil, that sort of just kind of lurks below the surface, is not, distinctive to Luxembourg or to Gutland. That's kind of global, it seems to me. That's a problem of the human condition, right? Do you think that, either of you, by the way, think that is how evil is? I mean, this does seem like an evil town, and yet there's a great line where I think I can't remember who it is, but somebody in the film says to Jens, give people around here a little bit of time, and once they get to know you, you're going to find some real friends. And I'm like, if those are real friends, I'm not sure I want to hang out in Gutland,
Yeah, well, I think evil very often doesn't know that it's evil. It's
right,
like, and in the film it's like that too. They really think that they're the good people.
That's
they're
right.
Good guys.
Yeah, sure.
And the structure of the film is also as such. It's using a very classical film structure. And what I always found shocking about film in general, especially about genre film, is that they're everything. Then the opposite of what we actually learn in real life and how real life works. It's that in film, the bad guys always get killed. They get a bullet in the head at the end of the film, and we cheer, and it's the good thing to do. And it's always shocking because it's the opposite of how our system works.
Well, it brings resolve, right? In some way, I suppose,
yes,
right?
It's a climactic emotional resolve.
Sure. Catharsis.
And in our film, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same as in any other classical film. In the end, the bad guys get shot. The happy guy gets the girl. She's in our mind she's pregnant. I mean, it's not clear in the film, but he's going to be the father of a family. It's a perfect happy end. At the same time, it's totally turned on its head because they're killers. This village is. From another point of view, they're basically just murdering people.
The more I think about it, and I haven't had a lot of time to reflect, it's a deeply disturbing film, actually, on some level. And for me, it's got elements of Deliverance and The Shining and Blue Velvet. I mean, I don't know if any of those things came up for you at all, or The People Under the Stairs, some Wes Craven stuff. There's a horrific element to this story, isn't there, Frederick? I mean. Did you see that while you were? I mean, do you agree?
So.
First of all,
Jerry wants to do something like that, or like we also didn't know what we will do. What's the feeling? So we always come into the scene, and then we saw what makes with you. What does it do? Yeah.
Yeah, and the references that you name it's funny because I'm always avoiding to mention Blue Velvet.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I never want to say to anyone.
Sorry for bringing it up.
No, but you're spot on. I used it in the beginning when we were doing financing because it's just such a good film to explain what I was after.
Sure.
But it's also a dead giveaway that you're a young
Well, do you know what's
filmmaker.
beautiful about it? Honestly, I said to my wife last night, Elizabeth, I haven't seen Blue Velvet in what was that, 81?
86,
I mean, it's 86. What is that, 30 some years, and yet there was and I'm getting goosebumps now, just that tone, right? And I think that's really quite remarkable and quite lovely about not only about your film but also about filmmaking in general, that you guys can create that kind of ethos, I guess you could say, that kind of environment.
Yeah. Well, the reason I just want to elaborate on the reason why I don't want to mention David Lynch usually is because it's just everyone uses David Lynch. He's like the biggest influence on my generation of filmmakers for sure. And I mean, I hear it all the time. We have a production company also, and we get scripts in a lot. And young filmmakers, they always mention Wes Anderson, David Lynch. That's the two things.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's very, and it's something that I started to avoid doing because it's just there needs to be some individuality now in filmmaking. Right. But Blue Velvet is just such a good example to me because it's a film which I believe is about childhood. It's really about I imagine it's about David Lynch's childhood because he must have been a child, and the film is set in '86, but it looks a lot like his childhood, like the '50s.
Right.
And I don't know. I didn't read it anywhere. I didn't hear him say it, but I imagine he was basically nostalgic about the time of being a kid, but from the from how can I say? I mean, I see my film as a lookout on the world from a child's perspective.
Right. Nice.
Where everything is mysterious and scary and not explainable. It's just there's so much deep, unsettling.
Well, and I think that's what I saw in the existential sort of angst. And it's interesting to me, you know, coming from Berlin and the German existentialism and Heidegger and Nietzsche and so on, that sense of anxiety and dread and you know, what does Lucy say to him? I don't have the guts to leave. Well, isn't that the problem? She doesn't have the way you read that in with an existentialist lens is, I don't have the guts to actually face my freedom, right? Yeah. And that's the problem, isn't it? Isn't that one of the major problems of the human condition, not being able to face your freedom? And you just got out of jail, for crying out loud. I love it. It's beautiful.
I mean, it's the main subject of the film in another context. It's all about imprisonment and freedom and what freedom really is. And we all think we're free just because we're working in an office all day long. And,
or work on some kind of perverse farm in Luxembourg.
Yeah. Yes. It's slavery in a certain sense.
Right.
But in the end of the film, I think Jens he accepts this this imprisonment, and that's the moment when you have to accept it, and once you accept it, you become free in a certain sense. Once you just accept your prison, I think if you're living if you are imprisoned, I don't know, I don't have this experience, but if you are really living in a prison, in a real prison or in a metaphorical prison, the only way that you can really deal with it is by accepting it and kind of making it your reality and living in this confined space. And I think that living a normal civilized life is a little bit like that, and that's what Jens discovers in the end of the film.
So good. We got to wrap up in a couple of minutes. Frederick, why do you wear the Honda jacket so proudly? I mean, I just at one point I went, why the Honda jacket?
I don't know. We just found on a costume rehearsal, and I was directly into it.
Yes. I think that's Josh's jacket.
Josh's jacket, of course, it's Josh's jacket. It's a jacket from the other guy from
the guy he turns into. I mean, he transforms into this guy, and he gets in the beginning of the film. Lucy gives him a bag full of clothes. And this is one of the pieces of. It's basically she gives him the kit on how to become Josh. Just kind of wear these clothes and walk in these shoes. And the moment where he wears the jacket, I think the jacket is really what. I mean, when I wear when I wear a jacket or when I wear a different pair of shoes, I feel different. And, And that's the moment where he suddenly he moves different. And as an actor, it must have been also important what kind of clothes you wear.
Yeah, of course.
So maybe we can wrap it up with this question, but and I hope we can do a part two. What I was saying to, I always say one of my biggest frustrations with my interviews is there's never quite enough time. It seems to me, and I know you guys have a really busy schedule and you got to get rolling. But Govinda, would you see this as a prophetic piece? Is this something that should be just enjoyed, or are we going? I mean, I think we're going a little deeper than that. But anyway, just interesting to me. Is this the way? Is this the current state of affairs? You know what I mean?
I don't know. I mean, like I mentioned before, I like to discover the film while I'm making it, and I know that there's plenty of things that are my how can I say my view on the world is in this film. That's why I leave it open, because I know that once you work on a script and you really let yourself just go, it kind of all finds its way into the fabric of the story. Into the structure of the story. So my viewpoint is in there, but it's really not a message that I want to give to anyone.
Right. It comes out in the telling, right? It comes out, and isn't that a beauty of a fable? It comes out in the retelling. Yeah. And that's
And I'm sure that my prejudices are in there as well. You know, I have friends who tell me like, "Oh man, you're really sexist." I'm looking at them and thinking, "Really? Okay." I didn't know that. And if that's the way, then I mean, I'm exposing myself totally there. So everything I see about the world and all the things I misread about the world are probably also in there. But that's the way. That's how it is when you make a film. You just kind of you put yourself out.
Well, I think it's a great piece of art in the sense that it's a dark film and yet entertaining and shines light into the darkness in a way that's it has a lot of implications, and as we've, I think, just found out, plenty to talk about.
Yeah.
So again, congratulations and welcome to
Thanks.
TIFF. Thank you so much for your time today, talking with Frederick and Govinda about their new film, Gutland, here at the Toronto International Film Festival. I really appreciate your time today, guys.